Is Reverse 1999 really going to be a victim of power creep? Welcome back to Cocky Gachas, and in this video, we're going to be talking about power creep in Reverse 1999 because a lot of people have been asking this ever since I released the video on the tier list for 1.4, and people have noted that why are all of our usual beginner banner units, right, like the regulars, like the Eternity, even Centurion, Fallen from Grace, right, the once tier 0, even the tier 0 currently in our global launch is not going to be anywhere near the top. And I also do agree, if you just look at it from a face value, looking at the tier list, right, you might think the same. However, we have to discuss and go into details to see whether it is really the case. But first, to preface this topic on power creep, I will be approaching it from a way, of course, looking at the relative strength of the units itself, whether they have been escalating over time, and also we're going to look at the difficulty of the content. Is it truly only clearable by all of those top tier units, right, that are new, or is it also possible that the old units are keeping up in this aspect? So this is going to be the main focus of this video. And first, I'm going to take a look at the new units, and then we are going to compare from a Portrait 0 front. So the new units in 1.4 are 37 and 6 respectively, and then in 1.3 it's Black Dwarf as well as Charmaine. In 1.2 we have Changeling or Changling, and also our favorite Tooth Fairy, and 1.1 is going to be with the Pickles as well as Melania. So all of these are our technically new units, right? Beyond that, the standard pool itself, when we start the game, we already have the rest of the units of this A Knight, Unli, Centurion, the beginner banner, Eternity, etc, etc. So just judging from that, right, at a face value, I think that when it comes to Portrait 0, when we just look at the power levels, right, of recommendations whereby people say you need to have this new unit, right, you will notice that Changeling as well as Tooth Fairy is going to be very evident, whereby the recommendations are super strong. Even when just purely looking at Pritwin's tier list, which I do not agree 100%, even then you can see Melania is now upgraded to S tier, Pickles is full S tier, everything is SS, while all the Leah, the Eternity, all of them in 1.4 currently are just A, and then even Centurion has been dropped to A in 1.4. So there is quite a bit of power level difference now when it comes to the new units and the older units. I think quite evidently, mostly in Tooth Fairy. And just to go into Tooth Fairy's fact, right, we are going to say that Tooth Fairy is a healer that everyone pretty much says that you need to have her to make the game easy. And I do agree from that fact. If you just compare her to Medicine Pocket, if you just take a look at what her skills bring to the team, is going to be the ultimate, whereby there is a Purify, there is going to be the debuff where it gives a stack of 25% crit rate for Confusion, does stack as well, and then there is also a Mass Heal with high multipliers, and also this has a 30% crit rate, which also means that on an expected value it's going to be higher in general, given that the stats are quite similar to other of the units like Medicine Pocket. And most notably, I think that the new units, their insight are traditionally quite impactful, and with Tooth Fairy in particular, we are looking at this Baby Tooth, which is the most busted thing, right, for a passive, whereby you don't even need to be using her cards, right? Just passively you're going to reduce the crit resist rate of and the crit defense for all enemies by 15% and lasting for one turn, right? It's for all enemies, it is effectively 15% crit rate and also 15% crit damage for the entire team. It's quite ridiculous when you look at this, and healer being an important role, right, for her to have so much of an offensive capability as well as at the same time having a good defensive in the healing, in the cleansing, which is why she's also the queen of the game currently, right, the gods of the game. And the other character that also came with Tooth Fairy, which make 1.2 a very good patch itself, is going to be Changling. So Changling is so good that it brings about the meta of the poison team, bring along like Sotheby, and most notably is that it has high multipliers when it comes to the normal skills, and also being an AoE ultimate user, she does bring a lot to the team when it comes to clearing U2 and Limbo, trivializing the content at times, right? If you just look at CN content, whereby the Limbo is just like simply just put Changeling and then bring a poison team, you're gonna have a good time. Even by herself, with her I3, she can function. So this unit as well as Tooth Fairy are our pinnacle of power creep, whereby our older units in their counterparts, right? You can think of Eternity as an AoE ultimate user, doesn't really compare that much to Changeling or Changling, and then Medicine Pocket also doesn't compare to Tooth Fairy. 1-for-1 already failed, and then Leah, with the introduction of Tooth Fairy, the whole game just broke, because every single team can actually function as a crit team. Any team that has Tooth Fairy effectively is a crit team, but Leah also cannot take advantage of the additional crit rate, which also caused her to be a lot weaker when compared to the newer compositions and the newer teams. But of course, at the same time, you can look at 37 as well as 6, and honestly, I would say that 37 at P0 is kind of underwhelming. Just look at her kit itself, right? This is going to be a Genesis attack follow-up whereby they have like definitely mediocre multipliers when it comes to the damage. It's not going to do the most damage, and it is kind of carried by the current patch whereby every single patch the content is going to be catered to the new units. Hence 37 is going to look a bit better than she is. Similarly for 6, although less to the extent of 6 whereby he is a good support unit at P0. So all of that considered, right, I don't really think that P0 is going to be the most noteworthy outside of 2 Fairy as well as Changeling, and not to mention some of the traditional units, right, like A Knight as well as Juvis are still top of the charts when it comes to tier list. This one is because of a strong controlling skills, and then this A Knight is because of the ridiculous amount of stats and the flexibility in that the Afflectus is not being counted by any of the units. So A Knight and Juvis are 2 good examples where Power Creep hasn't affected them that much, and also when it comes to support units like Anandi, you definitely will still want to use her, and she's still very, very relevant, right, until this point. Regulars also kind of carried by the current content. Voyager also very much used, and you can also see on your screen this is a triple S clear of the currency Serpent Rip, which is the most difficult boss rate, albeit it does like bring about 2 new units, 37 as well as 2 Fairy, but I would say that 2 Fairy is the one mainly making this content clearable for SSS, and instead of like 37 being extremely OP at P0. So all P0 still can clear, albeit you do need 2 Fairy, but other than that, I wouldn't say the Portrait 0 power creep is the most evident. I cannot talk about the new units, which is the Spartodia as well as the Isra, because their kits haven't released the multipliers yet, and I don't really know exactly how they're going to fare, right? Maybe power creep is going to come in the form of 1.5, who knows? But the thing that we are going to discuss now, and that is very evident, right, is going to be the power creep of portraits. And when we look at power creep of portraits, right, the most important thing we have to look at is going to be DPM charts. And over here, I have a couple DPM charts that we can refer to. And first one, this is going to be Charmaine. The user itself, NGA user, did not have a full breakdown of the DPMs from portrait to portrait, but there is a comparison between a couple portraits. So you can see over here, right, this is a P0 portrait, this is P2, and this is P5. So over here for P0, they did deal 70k damage, and then at P5, they did deal like 120k. So if you think about it, it's like 50 over 70k. So that is roughly around 70% of a DPS increase. Of course, the scenarios here are not exactly as controlled as a normal DPM comparison, but this is the best that we have. Roughly 70% increase when it comes to portrait 5. Over here we have the 6 comparison, whereby there is an actual DPM comparison for the portraits, and if I just scroll down to the portrait section, you can see, right, for the 1 target combination cycle DPM for the different portraits, in P1 you're going to have a 9% increase, P2 15%, P3 is a defensive one so it doesn't really increase any DPM, and then for P4 total is going to be 24% increase, and then lastly we're going to have almost 50% at P5. So even the 6 is pretty considerable given the fact that there is an empty portrait whereby it doesn't contribute to DPM. Already you can notice like quite significant upgrades even for 2 to 3 target combination cycles over here. But the most ridiculous one is going to be 37. So for 37, if I just click over here, this is the DPM difference when it comes to portraits. At P1, you're going to have a 9% increase. At P2, you're looking already at a 33%, P3 42%, P4 70%, and at P5 it is a 100% damage increase. So 37 is one of the most ridiculous units when it comes to portrait increase. And also when we compare and look at the data from this end, right, you can see that the trend is that the last few units that has been released is 6, 37 as well as Charmaine, and all of this have notable portrait upgrades, especially if you were to compare to like the old unit portrait whereby this is in fact I think this is Centurion. So if you take a look at the skill, yeah, this is Centurion. P0 to P5, the increase is only 20% DPM. So with Centurion, all 5 portraits being focused on DPS, still you only have a 20% increase compared to the 6 with 40+% and also 37 with 100%. So yeah, I do think that this game is getting very, very power creepy when it comes to high portraits. But at the end of the day, when I look at the content and the clears, right, P0 still managed to clear, albeit some of the power creep when the P0, like I mentioned just now, when it comes to 2 Fairy and Changeling has already happened. The difficulty wise, people are still able to clear content using the older units, which is what we are talking about in the first place, right? Powercreep has to be discussed in the context of whether you can clear content, and in that aspect, I think Reverse 1999 doesn't seem that power creepy from a free-to-play perspective. If you do save for the banners for the new units, you're going to get them, they are going to feel a bit better, sure, but are they that much better? Except for Tooth Fairy, maybe except for Changeling, are they that much better? I don't really think so. The older units like I mentioned, A-Knight and the Druvis, all of them still function well in Limbo in U2. Maybe for SSS rank, you do have to target the teams a bit better, but I've also seen people clearing with P5 Charlie. So from the end, power creep to me in Reverse 1999 hasn't been a problem yet as of 1.4. Now, of course, when we are discussing about power creep, we are looking at 1.4. Who knows, maybe the content in 1.5 will be unclearable anymore by all units. I highly doubt so, but honestly, there is a group of people that are being affected by this ramping up of difficulty, and that is the low rarity unit lovers. And for that, you do have to check out this video over here where I discuss whether investing in low rarity units is going to be worth it and how potentially useful are they going to be in the future. I'll see you guys over there. This is Cocky Gachas, signing off.